Oh, yeah, let's have some fun. Welcome to the Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University. WilmU Works, Danny Pommells, Noah Levick, our producer extraordinaire, Ben Barry in the cut, making things happen, pushing buttons, moving sliders, and cueing us when it's time to go. And good to see you, Noah Levick, being in person here at Rivers Casino. There is a gentleman sleeping here to my right in the front row of the sports book. Yeah, he looks comfortable, but
Yeah, it seems like he's having a restful afternoon, and
it's a rainy Thursday,
yeah,
snowy Thursday.
nothing wrong with it. Yeah,
But we're always glad to be with you and spend some time talking Sixers. Really fun to see the guys back on the court last night against the Washington Wizards. And, I was thinking about, topics we would discuss and things like that. And you're so in the know and sharp with, going with whatever I bring up, Noah. But we always try to find ways to incorporate other people and names and faces into the podcast to try to back off of talking about Joel Embiid so much because he's so awesome. But this is one of those nights where we cannot bury the lead by any means because Embiid with the 50 burger after, having nearly a week off, basically. And he comes out and 15 points in the first quarter, 50 at the end of the game. His arms raised triumphantly, walking back down the court. Those Wizards fans have got to be tired of him. 98 in 2 games against this team. Like some of those fans are having nightmares about this number 21.
yeah. I mean, I think those Wizards fans are dwindling, and they were outnumbered last night. But
You were there?
yeah. I mean, it was definitely a strong Philly contingent, as usually is in DC. And this is the third time in the past 4 games that he's scored at least 48 against the Washington Wizards. It's just mind-boggling. So yeah, he clearly has a nice strength advantage against Daniel Gafford, but as we so often say with Embiid, the variety and the deftness of touch and the skills that are uncommon for a 7-footer were very prominent as well. Down the stretch, he was money in the mid-range, and the Sixers needed that to cement the victory. And it feels like this is very much doable for him when he plays the Wizards. I mean, the first game they faced Washington this season, he got that 48 and 3/4. So Tyrese Maxiell, was joking after the game, he should have gotten 60. And honestly, I think if Joel Embiid were to one day score 60 against the Wizards, none of us would be too surprised. He's the best scorer in the world right now, and that is an opponent he absolutely loves to face.
Looking like an MVP for sure. And like I said, you have all the time off. He talked after the game with Ala Abdelnaby and Kate Scott that his chest was hurting because he was, expending so much energy and hadn't been in game shape in so long because of the illness and the layoff the Sixers had. I think this is the longest of their season, aside from the All-Star break. These 6 days, December 1st, December 2nd, it's 5 days in between playing. But man, what fun it was to watch. It's almost like he's out there trying new things, against this Wizards team. And we saw some of that dream shake. We saw the in-your-face mid-range. When he does that little hop step, I know the jump shot is coming, but the defender just doesn't seem to know whether it's Kyle Kuzma or Daniel Gazdag or whoever. I said Daniel Gazdag is a Union player.
Okay, yeah, we have a Danilo Gallinari and we have a Daniel Gafford, so I guess a little combo there. Yeah.
The Union player Dan Gazdag, but shout out to them. Daniel Gafford, whoever's guarding him, they just are a lamb for the slaughter, and that seems to be par for the course across the league. I mean, we saw him chew up Anthony Davis, who has been a formidable foe for him so far this season. Not many. You mentioned the scoring prowess, and I just want to accentuate how much he had it going on last night by all these things I'm saying.
Yeah, I think Boston has guarded him relatively well, both in the last playoff series and then this regular season. And Al Horford is an expert at that. And then historically, the Toronto Raptors have been good at it, but I think you can chalk a good amount of that up to...
We will see the Raptors soon.
Yeah, Raptors coming up soon, and they are not coached by Nick Nurse any longer, and I think the Sixers look a little more comfortable against them, at least when we've seen that matchup early this year. But yeah, I agree broadly that the vast majority of teams the Sixers play Embiid can get most of what he wants. And I think with Nurse, it's been cool to see the openness to trying him in so many different areas. So with Doc Rivers, I think the Sixers did well to expand Embiid's game a little bit. He wasn't just a post-up guy. He did great work at the nail and the elbows, but now he's got a career high in points off drives per game, 8 of those, and looks dangerous coming off dribble handoffs and slashing from the wing, and he's doing better work on the offensive boards. The Sixers have been more aggressive there. Yeah, the DHOs have been great. The two-man game with Maxey, and yeah, that very large sweet spot, I guess, in the mid-range is just so reliable. So it honestly must be a nightmare to game plan against this guy. And yeah, you feel for someone like Wes Unseld Jr., who doesn't have good defensive personnel and is trying to, throw some different defenses out there. Try a zone, try hard double teams, try a little single coverage. None of it's likely to work against a guy that is this huge and this skilled and this routinely dominant. Just the way Embiid is. And yeah, so he is the appropriate way to lead us off for sure. And then we will, of course, cover how the Sixers needed him to be very, very great, because I think the rest of the performance was not their finest by any means.
Yeah, they only got 4 guys in double figures, and one of them was Kelly Oubre, who we were glad to see back on the court in Washington. One thing I think just ties this whole Embiid thing in a bow is they had a stat last night on the broadcast with him reaching 35-5 for the 6th straight game, and he's missed some time in between them. But of the game, 6 straight games that he's played, he's the first Sixer to ever crack those numbers in 6 straight games. So, I mean, if you're placing your MVP bets, there's a guy out there here in Philly who is worth some consideration for sure. And well, I'm curious, what was the crowd like? Were they booing Embiid? Were they getting tired of him? Were they that engaged? Like, what was the crowd like? Were they just enjoying the show?
Yeah, there was a good amount of that, and I think honestly the moments where there was a swell in the noise, it did tend to be for Embiid highlights or, an Oubre dunk or something along those lines.
Kyle Kuzma tried to dunk on him again.
Yes. Yeah, there was a little back and forth there. Embiid picked up the technical. And yeah, I mean, give the Wizards credit. They competed well in this game, and I think gave the Sixers a tougher test than expected. But yeah, I would say a mixed crowd, not anywhere near full capacity, of course.
Right.
But I think the Sixers fans were there. You could feel they thought this was pretty cool that they got to see Joel Embiid score 50, and they were grateful for that. And definitely the move that got the biggest oohs and ahs was that dream shake-esque play that you're referring to. And again, for me, part of what's so impressive about that is it's coming like off a wing-esque drive. It's not coming from a stationary spot in the post. So just to
late in the game.
Yeah, it was a clutch shot for sure. And just to maintain that balance, have that agility, and also, have the
stamina,
boldness. Yeah, and definitely the stamina, I think, was a pleasant surprise. Nick Nurse before the game said he thought Embiid would probably be able to go normal stints, but as you alluded to, sounds like this illness he had was pretty serious, sidelined him for 2 games, and yet that was not evident in the fourth quarter. The Sixers got Embiid's A game down the stretch there. I think he was 4 for 4 on mid-range jumpers in the final 4.5 minutes. So just unreal stuff from him, and zero signs of rust exhibited on his end.
And he knows how to soak up the moment. I still can see him walking back down the court with his giant wingspan of arms raised to the heavens. But, we're going to talk about the X's and O's and what exactly happened there. But this 3 and now 17 Wizards team, giving them a real run for 3 quarters. You can go all the way to the fourth because they were still hitting shots, making it a 1-possession game way late in this one. 257 points by these 2 teams combined. So it was a lot of scoring going on in DC, although the Sixers, like I said, only have 4 guys in double figures. But I say all that to say Embiid, has a tendency to draw so much attention, and so many people are focused on him. But when you look at how the Sixers responded to what he was doing, they have like this big emotional boost with Kelly Oubre coming back, which maybe took away from some of the concentration or what have you, but he was really good in the fourth quarter. What do you feel like took away from their performance, and why did the Wizards play them so tough and so hard where the Sixers didn't quite have the wherewithal to kind of keep them at bay, particularly in the first half at least?
Yeah, I think primarily the unusually long
Layoff.
mini hiatus.
Yeah.
Of course, that is the case for all the teams in this position of not making the knockout rounds of the in-season tournament, but Sixers didn't handle it especially well. And look, this was a team that was down 5 guys against Boston. All of them were back in the lineup, including a key piece in Oubre, a very key player in Tyrese Maxiell.
Platoon.
Yeah, and just the bottom line was they were getting great high-quality looks, and they missed their first 13 three-point shots. I mean, that's an aberration, and you just shrug your shoulders and hope some of them start going in. I didn't think there were really any instances of the Sixers settling in a way that, was illogical or, chucking up bad looks. I think
you feel like the shots just weren't falling.
They just weren't falling, and there was a collective lack of rhythm. Now, I think defensively, there's a lot that could be criticized, and sure, you can attribute some of it to lack of cohesion and all of the pieces finally being together for the first time. But man, a lot of dunks and layups that the Wizards got without much trouble, and the Sixers tried to mix some things up. They sprinkled in zone. They changed, seemed to change the matchups here and there. And I just thought the regularity with which there were obvious breakdowns leading to open looks was hard to excuse. And yeah, we can say some of it is because of the layoff and because everyone
this
was
Wizards
healthy.
team can score too. They can score. Yeah.
They can score. They can't stop. But absolutely, no, they've got talented offensive players. I think it wasn't the worst defensive performance in the world, but no one's in that locker room is going to tell you it was a good one. And the Sixers have a lot to improve upon there. And yeah, I mean, this would have been a bad game to lose.
Definitely.
So they're very grateful they had Joel Embiid, and all of the stuff we just talked about is secondary, thanks to him. But yeah, they definitely have been a strong offensive team thus far, number 2 in offensive rating, but they're middle of the pack in the league currently on defense, and I think the talent is there to be better than that, and that's what they'll hope to do. They'll hope to trend up, I think, on defense. As we talked about last time, this chunk of the schedule
That's exactly
is not
what I'm looking at.
not the hardest. So I think a team like the Pistons, for instance, shouldn't be scoring a ton on the Sixers, and they'll hope to raise their standards on defense against those sort of opponents.
Yeah, good teams try to avoid these letdowns and not play down to their competition. And like you just said, they survive or really battle hard and show a lot of resolve through this tough gauntlet of their schedule. And here it lightens up with, as Noah mentioned, the Pistons on the horizon, Atlanta, another game with Washington, Charlotte. We talked about this in the last podcast.
Yeah,
but
yeah. No, I mean, you had me thinking after the last podcast. Just curious about, what the numbers were there. So those opponents, 27 and 70 combined.
The next 5 or
next
just
7 games.
Okay.
So, and that's not even counting the 3 and 17 Wizards twice, or the 2 and 19 Pistons twice. I mean, this is a really light stretch of the schedule on paper, but of course, last night, great evidence that the games aren't played on paper, and you have to be sharp, and sometimes weird things happen. Sometimes you start 0 for 13 from 3, and you have to battle through it. And yeah, I do think we should at least give the Sixers credit that they weren't deflated by that. And they got a nice little random lift when Tyrese Maxiell had a half-court buzzer beater to end the second quarter. And I think that made them feel a little better about themselves going into halftime. And not their greatest second half by any means, but they did what they needed to do. And yeah, I think that is a good bottom line here. And again, I have to give, the vast majority of that credit to Embiid. That's not to say everyone on the Sixers played poorly, but a lot of guys on this team are capable of doing much better than they did last night.
Nothing like leading by example. And man, the big fella had it going on. If you missed it, it's worth checking out again particularly if you're an Embiid fan, but even if you're a casual hoops fan, he really had it clicking against little JV varsity type of
Yeah.
matchup for Embiid. And I really, when you look at the schedule, all this is leading up to the Miami Heat game on Christmas Day, where the season technically really starts. Although with this in-season tournament, I feel like they built some good momentum toward these early season games being more viable, and particularly how Indiana, the Pelicans have embraced playing in this, these pressure packed games and whatnot, and they've been fun to watch. I mean, I can't front. And Tyrese Halliburton probably just really stands out to me, but no, getting back to the matter at hand, they're playing on Christmas Day and not the first game or not the 12-1, 2 o'clock game. We're in prime time against the Heat, Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid, all the powers that be. So this lighter schedule definitely prepares them for what they're going to experience on Christmas Day. And I think they have one back-to-back here.
Yes.
In Tuesday, Wednesday, or excuse me, when is that back-to-back? Friday, Saturday.
Charlotte, Detroit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
so
Yep.
the best team in this stretch is on deck, and I believe that is the 9 and 10 Atlanta Hawks. So not saying the Sixers can take for granted that they'll breeze through all this. Again, they most definitely did not have an easy time last night, but really they should not lose more than one of these games. I mean, they're a very good team. They have the MVP, and they've got to take advantage of this stretch for sure.
Yeah, we will get into more of these talking points and discuss all that is from that last night's game. I can't even find the commercial. I need to read these commercials, but I can't even find them in my phone. So I'll have to punt on that and come back to it. But this is a live podcast, so that's what happens with live podcasts sometimes. But if we're not talking about Embiid, we got to talk about Tyrese Maxiell, and he was the second leading scorer. I feel like his efficiency last night was a little overlooked, although he could have helped them out from three. But just another Maxey type of game where he shows that, of the guards on the floor, I'm going to show and demonstrate why I'm of the upper echelon here. And just another good performance from him.
Yeah, a good game, and definitely telling that he can put up 26 and 7, and you're fully aware that he could have done a lot better in multiple areas. But yeah, I think his feel for those little point guard nuances of how and when to feed the hot hand and how to vary it effectively here and there, that shined this year for me. I think there have been few stretches for the Sixers where you think, why are they, going to this guy offensively, or why aren't they feeding this player who's recently been effective or who has this mismatch? I think Maxey seems to be a pretty quick learner with those little floor general sort of things, and that's a really good development for the Sixers. But yeah, I think he can do much better. He's done 50 himself this season, and
First teammates, Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxiell, since Dana Barros and Willie Burton to go for 50 in the same season. Did that take you back at all, hearing those names?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty wild too that it only took this duo
right, less than 25 games.
Yeah, this is the Sixers' 20th game. So it's a different era. These sort of stat lines are a little more common, but I think we can safely say both of those performances were special, were exceptional displays by tremendous players, and I think there's a lot more of that to come in all likelihood. Tyrese Maxiell, 23, and Joel Embiid still looks firmly in those prime years.
So if you had to guess, is there another 50-point game on this team this season?
I think I'd lean toward yes.
Okay.
Sure. I mean, you've got multiple options, which is always nice. I think we can pretty safely narrow it to those two. You always get
right.
the occasional.
I don't know if Tobias Harris is going to erupt for 50.
Yeah, you never know, but I think,
Furkan, maybe?
Furkan has gone off for, I think, 40 in Summer League.
Right.
No, I mean, it's most likely going to be those two. You occasionally get a Corey Brewer 50-point game. Right. But yeah, these two guys, they put up 30 plus really, really regularly. Embiid now, I think 40 doesn't even feel that unusual. You're like, all right, Joel Embiid scored 40, cool. So yeah, I think I would lean toward yes, and not saying I would lock it in, but I think more likely than not that we see this again over the next 62. They've got some time here to do something special again.
For sure. And let's finally pay those bills. Thanks to our producer, Ben Barry, for setting me straight here with the reads. And we're going to talk about one of our title sponsors, and very thankful to have them, Wilmington University. Find your higher education home at Wilmington University, where your academic success is celebrated by a caring community. Explore your opportunities at wilmu.edu. Celebrity cook Steve Martirano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martirano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and much more. Make reservations for Martirano's Prime on Open Table. Back here in the Sixers Talk podcast, and our guy on the front row is awake, Noah. I see him, but he's nodding back off. He kind of has the leg propped up now, but I think he's just tired, man. I don't know if that's inebriated. Just looks tired. Just looks a little.
We've all been there where you just need to shut the eyes and
even though there's 17,000 neon signs and 24,000 TVs around him, he's catching some Z's. But we'll take a step back from him and talk about the guy who scored a dozen points last night and was so happy to have him back. He said when he spoke to the media at the Sixers practice facility, did Kelly Oubre Jr., that basketball, being on that court, is what keeps him sane. And I don't know, that really caught my ear, and it made me feel a little, mental health is such in the discussion these days, particularly with athletes, and it made me feel, a little sympathetic for him and what he had been through in the month of time that he's missed, and particularly to see him so invigorated on some of those putback dunks and, plays that he made during the game. And he really does expend a lot of emotion and energy. And he's, very, engaged in what's happening out there. So I'm sure that not having that outlet really, kind of messes with your psyche or changes, your routine and how you do things. So it was good to see him back out there. And listen, 10 points in the fourth quarter is 10 points in the fourth quarter, particularly against a team that you need to beat and was giving you a run for your money when, you really shouldn't have. So he played a key role in helping them get the win, and it was great to have him back out there.
Yeah, he was talking about during his time away from basketball, he was playing the guitar and on the couch, watching TV shows with his kids.
It's not the same.
Yeah, it's not what he loves the most, and what feels like his calling, it sounds like. So yeah, he said going into the game he was ready to run through a wall, and I think initially he tried to guard against that, not be too emotional, keep his focus. And I think understandably, his initial stint was maybe a little lower energy than usual, a little subdued, a little trying to get his rhythm and flow back. And again, all of that about par for the course in this situation where you're coming off an 11-game absence. But I was impressed in that fourth quarter by how willing he was to just fly in there and not shy away from contact and really just attack that rim, attack the offensive glass.
Yeah, he didn't have any stamina issues either.
The Sixers limited him to 19 minutes. He said there wasn't any sort of official restriction. It sounds like
that was just the flow of the game. Yeah.
If he had his way, he would love to play, all the minutes, of course. So I don't think there's any physical concern lingering as far as, the conditioning. I think he put in some good work there. We saw him, doing sprints off to the side even before he was back on the court. So I think he did his best to be ready for this. And it was about what you'd expect in the first half, and then definitely more than I anticipated in that fourth quarter. And the Sixers generally need someone to step up in those Embiid-less minutes. And Oubre, really good contribution there. And for now, he is coming off that bench, and I'm expecting that'll be the case for the foreseeable future. Nick Nurse did say pregame, nothing's crystallized. He doesn't feel any, obligation to set X or Y in stone with his starters or his rotations, and just the norm these days is that all changes a lot. But he said it's something they're monitoring, and they'll try to learn about the team here, for the time being while they're full strength. But it does seem like they like the notion of Batum in that starting lineup, getting a lot of good minutes with Embiid, who he's shown great chemistry with, and Kelly Oubre Jr. Potentially providing that classic sort of spark and some good athleticism and scoring off the bench.
And one of the reasons there is so much versatility for Nick Nurse and how he configures this lineup is Mr. Steady as she goes. Whoever he's out on the floor with, DeAnthony Melton just seems to find his spots and rhythm. Yes, we've talked about his finishing and things like that, but his contribution to the team doesn't seem to waver much from what you expect or need from him. In a lot of instances, he showed up last night against the Wizards. Yes, the Wizards. But to me, it was really the joint interview with Tyrese Maxiell after the game that shows that he's just so much a part of the fabric of what this Sixers team is now. And okay, maybe I'm heaping a little too much on it, but I wanted to get your impression of Melton's performance last night, the joint interview, which I'm sure you were in the locker room for, and how that came together. And he seems to be a player that is cerebral enough to be connected no matter who is out there on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's spot on that culture-wise, he's so important to this team. And I think he's got a great mix of like a natural, easygoing personality with that innate competitiveness and hating to lose and having standards for himself and all that. So yeah, and being willing to accept whatever role's thrown his way. Obviously last year him and Maxey traded starting spots for a little bit, and they both talked a lot about how that wasn't how they preferred things to be, but they get along really well off the court. They love getting in little jabs at each other, cracking jokes, and there's just a great lightness about that duo that coincides nicely with pushing each other to be great on the court and wanting each other to succeed and wanting the best for their brother out there. So yeah, it's a fun young duo I think the Sixers have, and I think it's been nice at the beginning of this season just to have some stability and clarity that if everyone's healthy, that is the starting backcourt. And DeAnthony Melton, to me, is a starting level player in this league. I think, I'm not sure I'd agree with the assessment that he always provides exactly what the Sixers are expecting. I think sometimes he's better than anyone could have hoped. He'll, knock down 5, first half threes in a playoff game versus the Celtics or whatever, but still has the streakiness as a shooter, had the early season slump there. And I do think he can raise his level defensively. I think there's the ability to make fewer mistakes there and still be really aggressive and disruptive on that end of the court. And I'm sure Nick Nurse feels the same way and, sees higher defensive capacity for DeAnthony Melton. But yeah, no, bottom line, super, super valuable role player.
Yeah.
And
I know he went to USC. I just kind of consider him as an overachiever. I don't,
Yeah.
that's my perception of him. I mean, he's
Yeah,
he's an undersized guy, you know what I mean? And I really want to know, I'm curious where you think he is on the priority list as far as re-signing or keeping him around.
Yeah, I mean, so my understanding there is, on Melton's side, yeah, letting things wait and not doing an extension this summer, seems sensible.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, as we talked about before, I think that was logical enough given the likelihood that Melton would be a full-time starter on this team and get chances to thrive in Nick Nurse's system. So yeah, I think that's in all likelihood still open, and everything feels pretty contingent on what happens for the Sixers at the deadline. But I know for sure that Daryl Morey and the Sixers love his game, and they think he's got room to grow. Like, only 25 years old, and I do think though there are some weaknesses that will probably stick. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be a great finisher, for instance. I have seen ways in which he's flashed progress offensively. Doing a little more steady work in those minutes where he's got to handle the ball and becoming a little more comfortable with like high volume 3-point shooting and coming off screens as a 3-point shooter. Again, he's 25, not anticipating any wild Tyrese Maxiell-esque most improved leap, but I think that is a factor in all this when the Sixers try to think about their team building. That Melton is already good and valuable for them, and not ludicrous to think he could improve. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think he needs to be more consistent as a starter for this team. I think it's nice that.
Is he just a default starter because of the situation? I feel like he'd be better off the bench and not be in the starting lineup in a more robust lineup, a more robust roster where you have a better, backcourt situation next to Maxey. But I don't know. Maybe you see it differently.
Yeah, it doesn't feel odd to me that he's a starter. I think he would be worthy of starting on a lot of teams. And yeah, I don't feel there's really situations where the Sixers are like overwhelmingly outmatched with size.
Because Melton's
he's got that wingspan. He's got that toughness and that ability to guard up. And I think the 3-point volume is always nice, in a starting lineup that includes Joel Embiid. And I think Melton is doing his part with that. But yeah, I think like he's a very good role player for this team, and him becoming a more steady player,
better version of himself,
is the kind of thing that helps you get over the second round hurdle, of course. And he had those great looks in Game 6 against Boston that he didn't knock down. Fine margins and that sort of stuff is really impactful when the playoffs roll around. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely nice for him that I think 19 points or something doesn't feel extraordinary. Doesn't feel like he shot out of his mind or had a really exceptional game. I think he's growing in comfort with those little quick hitting threes, with those transition attacks, with the catch and shoot looks off the times Embiid's double teamed. So the Sixers will want all that to keep trending in a good direction. And I think they'll continue to believe that there's some more in there for Melton. But yeah, for me now, I don't see any reason to remove him from the current starting lineup. But I hear you. We all know the trade deadline could be really big for the Sixers. They're certainly going to explore and be aggressive and all that stuff. So who knows what the team will look like in February and where Melton will fit there. But I think him and Maxey have been a nice duo on and off the court. And I think you're spot on that the off-court side of it has evolved. And I think that there are two guys who just naturally love to smile and easygoing, chill personalities who brighten up a room. Maxey's a little more in the spotlight most often. Melton's a little more chill, but I think they're two guys who just naturally mesh really well in that way, and definitely cool to see.
I always like to tie things back to NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com. Before we get out of here, Noah Levick, can you give us some insight of what you're working on the website?
Yep. So, coverage from DC last night, observations on the game, and expanding on some of the things we hit on and a bit more. Then moving forward, we will have Sixers Hawks coverage tomorrow, and we've got some neat features cooking as well. So I'll have more to say on that later. But yeah, some feature content in the near future. But yeah, immediately on deck, the Atlanta Hawks, and again, Sixers will look to take care of business against a team they should be able to beat.
Listen, it ain't winter yet. But my boy Noah Levick, I see that winter beer creeping in. Let it go, Noah. Just let it be what it has to be. Will you ever grow it real long like it used to be?
I don't. I think probably not. But
those times have passed.
I think those times have passed. But yeah, there's some unavoidable length. So this is where we are now, and we will reevaluate, I guess, in a couple days.
Is that Central Dolphin?
This is the Colorado State Rams.
Okay, got you. All right.
Yes.
Similar.
I've been getting so many comments on this. Everyone's like, "Did you go to CSU?" I have to say, no, I didn't. But I was there for a couple of days, and I thought it was a neat vibe.
It looks cozy, bro.
Exactly. I think it's just it's a nice item to have in the winter months.
Well, We are signing off here on the Sixers Talk podcast. Ben Barry, our producer, brought me a burrito. It's sitting on the edge of the desk right there. I'm going to knock that out here post haste. And hopefully he got you one in the brown bag that's over here. No, I see. Yeah, hopefully maybe he took your order. I don't know. But we'll get to that. I'll get to my burrito. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching the Sixers Talk podcast. Our 100,000 YouTube subscribers. Let's go. We appreciate it so much. For Ben and Noah, I'm Danny. We'll see you next time.